Well, let's start with the big story of the day, where Pakistan has raked up Kashmir yet again at the United Nations. Making his maiden address at the United Nations General Assembly, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shahid Abbasi has called for the resumption of dialogue with India on all issues, including Kashmir. Now, Abbasi demanded that international investigation into the alleged rights violations and also the appointment of a special envoy for Jammu and Kashmir should immediately be looked into.
India has responded with massive and indiscriminate force to suppress the Kashmiris, shooting indiscriminately at children, women and youth. Hundreds of innocent Kashmiris have been killed or injured. Shotgun pellets have blinded and maimed thousands of Kashmiris, including children. Let me reiterate, Pakistan remains open to resuming a comprehensive dialogue with India to address all outstanding issues, especially Jammu and Kashmir, and discuss measures to maintain peace and security.
But cornered on terror, Abbasi said that it is not correct to blame Pakistan for military and political stalemate in Afghanistan, and also asserted that his country will not be anyone's scapegoat. Now, reacting to comments on Pakistan being a safe haven for terror which were made by Donald Trump during his South Asia review policy, he claimed that Taliban safe havens are located not in Pakistan but in large tracts of the territory that is actually controlled by the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Having suffered and sacrificed so much due to our role in the global counter-terrorism campaign, it is especially galling for Pakistan to be blamed for the military or political stalemate in Afghanistan. We are not prepared to be anyone's scapegoat. Taliban safe havens are located not in Pakistan but in the large tracts of territory controlled by the Taliban in Afghanistan.
So that is what Shahid Khan Abbasi had to say about the allegations that there were safe havens for terror which were located within the soil of Pakistan. Now, these were statements that were made by Donald Trump after his South Asia review policy. And to discuss more on this and what exactly this will imply in the subcontinent, we are joined by my colleague Taha Siddiqui, who joins us live from Islamabad now. Well, Taha, it is an interesting bit of a statement and also a very strong statement where Abbasi has said that Pakistan will not be made into a scapegoat for essentially failures which do not belong to it, but rather are American failures in the war on terror. So how is this being viewed in Pakistan?
Well, definitely that's one thing that is being focused on actually, because all eyes are on the relationship between Pakistan and United States. Given what Trump's speech, after Trump's policy speech on Pakistan and Afghanistan, there have been a lot of tensions between the two countries. This time around, when Shahid Khan Abbasi, the Pakistani Prime Minister, is already there at the UNGA, before this speech of his late last night, he met with the U.S. President Donald Trump, and he also met with the U.S. Vice President and had long meetings with them. And after that, it seemed like the White House also released a statement which reflected some positivity. And then the Pakistani Foreign Office also said that there was some positivity and breakthrough in the relationship. So we're seeing that, at the UN, focusing on the fact that, we cannot be scapegoated is a part and parcel of that sort of narrative building that the Pakistani premier has tried to do.
And also, Taha, dwelling a little more on this, Pakistan had always viewed itself as an important and almost an indispensable ally of sorts in America's war against terror in Afghanistan. But considering the changed scenario in the White House, how is Pakistan looking at the relationship with the US going forward?
Well, definitely. I mean, with the meeting with President Trump of Shahid Khan Abbasi, and then which was very short, apparently, from what we understand. But then there was a longer meeting with the vice president, and matters pertaining to Pakistan came under discussion. So Pakistan has been reporting that as a breakthrough. Main newspapers in Pakistan were talking about how there has been some ice breaking between the two countries. Going forward, Pakistan definitely has had a very long alliance with the United States. In the recent few weeks, we've seen some tensions, but definitely when you talk to people here, especially the policymakers, they say and they realize the very fact that the U.S. is sort of an indispensable ally, and they cannot work without the United States in the region.
Right, absolutely. Do continue to stay on with us, Taha. Meanwhile, the world, however, is not buying Pakistan's defense. BRICS ministers, for their part, have reiterated their strong condemnation of terrorism in all its forms and manifestations at the UNGA. This after India's External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj castigated Pakistan without naming the country. Now, speaking at the BRICS ministerial meeting, she said that countries who use religion to sponsor terrorism must be condemned. Now, slamming countries who encourage terror safe havens, she said, and I quote, "The horror of terror haunts global peace and security." Now, Swaraj has also called on the members of all states to condemn efforts made by some nations to justify terrorism. Now, she said, and I quote further, "There is a need for collective efforts to disrupt terror networks, their financing and also movements." Now, the BRICS nations have strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms. The BRICS leaders called for the expeditious adoption of a comprehensive convention on international terrorism. This is the very strong statement that's been given out by Sushma Swaraj, India's foreign minister at the UNGA. Now, coming back to you, Taha, on this statement that's been made by Sushma Swaraj, we also saw what the Xiamen declaration immediately after the BRICS summit, which was held in China. How is that development being viewed in Pakistan? Because China so far has been, has considered Pakistan to be its all-weather ally. But that change in stance and practically the same sort of a statement being repeated by the Indian foreign minister at the UNGA, how is that being viewed in Pakistan?
Well, as far as the BRICS statement is basically concerned, and then even when the BRICS conference happened earlier in China, after that there was a lot of concern in Pakistan, and that was when the Pakistani foreign minister actually flew to China a few days after that. And before he left, he did say that we should stop trying the patience of our friends. By friends, he meant friendly countries like China or other countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey. He also went to Turkey. He went to Iran. These are considered to be allies of the Pakistani state, and have independent relationship and not a relationship via United States. So in that sense, there has been a lot of concern, and Pakistan does understand that it is facing growing isolation, and there is some realization when you see the statements coming out of the foreign ministry, especially the foreign minister himself has repeatedly said in the last couple of weeks that we have to put our house in order, and that I is a reflection of all this pressure that Pakistan has been under for the past few months.
Absolutely, and considering, looking at the larger scenario, especially with the change in the White House, and considering, the sort of statements that we've seen come out from the Trump administration, and also, there's also this belligerence within Pakistan itself, where we heard within Pakistan statements saying that Pakistan can actually do without the military aid, which is actually given by the United States. Can we expect more choppy weather in the US-Pakistan relationship going forward?
Well, as we discussed earlier, basically Pakistan cannot do without the United States. And it's not just the military aid or the assistance it's getting. It's also that most of the military equipment and high-grade weaponry in Pakistani army is provided by the United States since the 1960s.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of arsenal and a lot of weaponry which they rely on the United States to refurbish, the United States to repair, and Pakistan does not have the technology to do so. So, I was talking to some military personnel here and talking to them about the United States, and they said if today we want to sort of break off the relationship with the United States, it'll still take us 20 years to sort of become self-reliant and independent from that technology that the US has provided. Right. So definitely it's not happening anytime soon.
Absolutely indeed, Taha. We'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us with your perspective from Islamabad.